Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Padamamsa Padvajacharya Aśānteṣu Shishimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnupad Padamamsa Padvajacharya Aśānteṣu Shishimad. Srila Guru Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Brahmsiko Shri Kṛṣṇa Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannathpuri Dham Ki Jai, New Dwarka Dham Ki Jai. Garantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Jumunamai Gangamai Ki Jai. Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Jagya Ki Jai. Transcendental Prasadam Distribution Ki Jai. Gaura Pramananda Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the summer devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the summer devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the summer devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories, all glories, all glories. Shri Guru Granth Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the third canto, chapter 31, text number 34. And the words I picked out today is asādhuṣu, saṅgam. Asādhuṣu means wicked, and saṅgam means association. So what we're doing is these particular verses, this chapter, it's talking about sexual desire. And it's presented in the Bhagavatam as a fundamental and pervasive force in the material world. And it's deeply intertwined with the concept of Maya. And it's considered the root cause of material entanglement, suffering, and the repetition of birth and death. So I hope we get the feeling that we're giving these classes out of compassion for each other and not like to entertain or to show off our learning or to share, or to just blast someone, because it's always like we always have a tendency to blame. But they say you'll never heal or build anything worthwhile from a base of blame. So hopefully out of compassion we're actually giving our association, and we're trying to help each other and nourish our Kṛṣṇa consciousness so that we could have a strong spiritual atmosphere. So let's dive into the verse. Teṣv aśānteṣu mūḍheṣu khaṇḍitātmasv asādhuṣu saṅgam na kuryāc chocyeṣu yoṣit-krīḍā-mṛgeṣu ca teṣv aśānteṣu mūḍheṣu khaṇḍitātmasv asādhuṣu saṅgam na kuryāc chocyeṣu yoṣit-krīḍā-mṛgeṣu ca teṣv aśānteṣu mūḍheṣu khaṇḍitātmasv asādhuṣu saṅgam na kuryāc chocyeṣu yoṣit-krīḍā-mṛgeṣu ca. Vaishnavis, teṣu aśānteṣu mūḍheṣu khaṇḍitātmasv asādhuṣu saṅgaṁ kuryāc chocyeṣu yoṣit-krīḍā-mṛgeṣu ca teṣu aśānteṣu mūḍheṣu khaṇḍitātmasv asādhuṣu mūḍheṣu bereft. Word meanings. Teṣu, with those. Aśānteṣu, coarse. mūḍheṣu, fools. khaṇḍita-ātmasu, bereft of self-realization. Asādhuṣu, wicked. Saṅgam, association. Na, not. Kuryāt, one should make. Chocyeṣu, pitiable. yoṣit, of women. Krīḍā-mṛgeṣu, dancing dogs. Cha, and. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. One should not associate with a coarse fool who is bereft of the knowledge of self-realization and who is no more than a dancing dog in the hands of a woman. Purport. The restriction of association with such foolish persons is especially meant for those who are in the line of advancement in Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Advancement in Kṛṣṇa consciousness involves developing the qualities of truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, gravity, intelligence and spiritual knowledge, simplicity, material opulence, fame, forgiveness, and control of the mind and the senses. All these qualities are to be manifested with the progress of Kṛṣṇa consciousness. But if one associates with a śūdra, a foolish person who is like a dancing dog in the hands of a woman, then he cannot make any progress. Lord Caitanya has advised that any person who is engaged in Kṛṣṇa consciousness and who desires to pass beyond material nescience must not associate himself with women or with persons interested in material enjoyment. For a person seeking advancement in Kṛṣṇa consciousness, such association is more dangerous than suicide. Wow. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshushanmalitamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Caitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayamupagadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Jai Shri Kṛṣṇa Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Kṛṣṇa Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya Kṛṣṇa Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Jaya Pataka Swamini Tinamane Namachara Pradayane Nitya Kripa Padayane Gorakata Damadaya Gramadharitane. Namo Vishnupadaya Kṛṣṇa Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamane Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschacha Desa Tarane. Vanchakopa Tubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Okay, what a verse. So, I guess we'll repeat it. It's very poetic, isn't it? teṣv aśānteṣu mūḍheṣu khaṇḍitātmasv asādhuṣu saṅgam na kuryāc chocyeṣu yoṣit-krīḍā-mṛgeṣu cha. Translation. One should not associate with a coarse fool who is bereft of the knowledge of self-realization and who is no more than a dancing dog in the hands of a woman. So I was checking out Jiva Goswami's translation in his Krama Sandarbha. He says here, for this particular verse, one should not associate with sinful, violent, foolish, destroyers of the self, the most lamentable people, and with the playthings of women. So he's getting more direct. He's actually explaining what it means, what a coarse fool is. And then he says, cha, at the end of the verse it says cha. He said that indicates that not associating with the asādhu, which is the fool, and also not associating with playthings of women. So the men who are attached to women. And so, but the next verse is amazing too, so I'll just give his translation of that. Man's bondage and bewilderment is not due to attachment to objects as much as it is due to his association with women and to his association with men who associate with women. So he said in the purport there that the fault is explained. By association, one develops desires similar to the other person. So just see the power of association. And so, very nicely described here. But and in Vishnuva Chakravarti Thakur, he describes here that there's 3 verses that we are supposed to avoid. I mean, it's telling us what we should avoid here. So let's see what he says here. Let's just repeat those verses. It starts with 32. If the human enjoys in his life by associating with sinful persons, with efforts for satisfying the genitals and stomach, he enters hell as before. So this is how he gets another hellish body and enjoys life, but in the material world, and suffers. But he says, this also implies that if instead of associating with sinful people, he enjoys in his life with efforts for serving Kṛṣṇa again, he will attain Kṛṣṇa. So that's described also. So 33, from that association, truth, cleanliness, mercy, silence, intelligence, beauty, shyness, fame, forgiveness, control of the mind, control of the sense, and good fortune are destroyed. So that was yesterday's verse. And today, he translates it as, one should not associate with sinful, violent, foolish destroyers of the self, the most lamentable people, the playthings of women. So he says in this purport, who is bad association? And so he's saying Kapila Dev forbids their association in these 3 verses. So this is what is forbidding the association. And he says, khaṇḍita-ātmasu means those who destroy themselves because of degrading themselves. But he mentions in parentheses that the Atma, it cannot be destroyed. And then I'll just read 35. Man's bondage and bewilderment is not due to attachment to objects as much as it is due to his association with women and to his association with men who associate with women. So, anyway, these are verses that you'll find in the Brahmachari handbooks. There's all these verses, and there's so many quotes all throughout the Bhagavatam that actually support these quotes. And I remember we used to read those all the time when we were brahmacharis. But anyway, these are some of the most important verses in that regard in these particular verses that we're discussing here. And this is the point here. So in this particular chapter, Lord Kapila's instructions on the movements of the living entity, how we enter this human body. But we're just concentrating on verses 32 to 42. And these are the important points here about the effects of bad association. So we should avoid bad association of sinful people who are dancing dogs in the hands of women. That's our verse today, 34. And 32 is similar to 34. And then it goes to these 35 to 42, is that we have to be aware. In fact, it describes how even Brahma, we're going to hear how he got attached to his own daughter. And that only Narayan is the only person that could resist this sex desire. So we have to, even great kings, they've just fallen prey to women. But I was trying to see the essence of these verses, like 32 to 42. And there's some core principles. And it said the main problem is that we have uncontrolled attraction to the opposite sex and material sense gratification. That it's the strongest form of spiritual bondage. And it's so powerful that it can captivate even Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. And then it describes the root danger here, is that this attraction isn't just about individuals. It's about the fundamental force of Maya, the illusion. And that's what keeps us trapped in this endless cycle of material existence. And it prevents us from realizing our true spiritual nature. But not only is it like blasted, like I said, we're not blasting, but it gives a solution. How we can transform all these attachments by redirecting them toward Kṛṣṇa, the Supreme. And instead of renouncing relationships or material things, we should engage everything and everyone in spiritual service. So this turns potential spiritual obstacles into stepping stones. And so what's the practical path that's given to us throughout all Prabhupada's books and teachings, lectures, is avoid association of people focused on sense gratification. And just seek the company of spiritually minded people. And engage your family, your work, all your activities, and in the service of Kṛṣṇa. And then practice this real renunciation. It means using everything for God, rather than for our personal enjoyment. So I think the insight to take away from here is that the same energy that binds us materially, it can actually liberate us spiritually when it's properly directed. So love and attachment aren't the problem. It's misdirected love and attachment that are. So it's interesting here, it's showing that we don't want to suppress, but we want to redirect this powerful force of love and attraction from temporary material objects to the divine person, Kṛṣṇa. And that's even within our material relationships and our responsibilities. So we can see here how Lord Kapila is very compassionate to his mother. He's not blasting her, but he's teaching her practical spiritual practices that you could take up, and that works with this human nature rather than against it. So I thought that was really Nice. That love and attachment aren't the problem, but misdirected love and attachment are. So here we see, you may think this image is realistic, right? But it's actually, this image is created from words. They call them prompts. So you just type a description and it stands for images. So they have this Kali Yuga technology where you can create a machine that can practically do anything. And this is what Kṛṣṇa told Arjuna. When Mayadanava wanted to give him this technology, Kṛṣṇa said, no, that's meant for Kali Yuga, where they can just, do anything. So he said, so anyway, we're using it for Kṛṣṇa. So in the same way, just think how material nature works with our prompts, with our desires, with our lust. She creates these 3D forms or machines that we can enter into and act out all our desires. And that's what this whole chapter is about, entering a human body. So just see, we have, people may think, oh, I'm free to choose whatever damn prompt, I want any desires I want. But yes, it's freedom, your freedom from good sense. You're actually a coarse fool, which is described in this chapter. So it's described that actually association with attractive women is the gateway to hell. And so it's very important for devotees who want to advance to really understand this. And this reminded me of the story of Pingala in the 11th canto. Okay, I'm almost finished, hold on. So, one who's failed to control his senses immediately feels attraction upon seeing a woman's form, which is created by the illusory energy of the Supreme Lord. Indeed, when a woman speaks with enticing words, smiles coquettishly, and moves her body sensuously, his mind is immediately captured, and thus he falls blindly into the darkness of material existence. Just see how an image like this that's not even real can affect you, where you just want to go to the next one, get out of here, right? It's like, but this is the power of women. It's to attract men through all their material senses. So this is what happens to men. So it's not only the man becomes a dog, but the woman actually becomes a dancing dog in the hands of men. So it's that. So everyone gets it, right? So he is a generic term, and it also can mean she. So this is the bondage, and this is the strongest bond that we have in the material world. But actually, we can take advantage of the spiritual master. He provides a strong rope for spiritual instructions to pull us out of the dark well of this household life. That's how we should be bound to the spiritual master and to devotees, senior devotees like that. So this just shows you the power of Maya, how it can affect us. How everyone was affected in this room, just from an action illusory image. And this is what we're creating with our minds, illusory images. Desiring things that are not really real. They're actually temporary. But we've given the intelligence to understand what is real. So here's some more analogies that are given throughout the Bhagavatam. And there's so many in this chapter, but I just picked out a few, which everyone realizes. So just see, the hunter may trap and kill an elephant by exploiting its sensuous desire to touch and captivate the female elephant. And also, he may kill the deer by attracting it with the beautiful sounds of, like a horn or a flute. And then also the bee, it can very easily be killed by exploiting its attraction to fragrance of flowers. Is that amazing? So it's described also in the 11th canto that this is the actual verse. A saintly person should accept only enough food to keep his body and soul together. He should go from door to door accepting just a little bit of food from each family. Thus he should practice the occupation of a bumblebee. And in the purport there, the devotees give a very nice purport. I think it's worth reading some of it here. So it says here that sometimes a bumblebee is attracted by the extraordinary aroma of a particular lotus flower, and it lingers there neglecting his usual activity of flying from flower to flower. Unfortunately, at sunset, the lotus flower closes, and thus the infatuated bumblebee is trapped. So just lingering around in the material world, focusing on these material objects, then we become trapped. Whether it's a rope or whatever it is like this, by the sound, by the touch, all these things attract the human. Certain animals have certain senses that are very powerful, but the human being, all of his senses are super powerful. And then another one here is the fish. It's killed by its desire to taste the bait on the hook. So we have to, it's described in this canto, the 11th canto, that if we desire to learn detachment from this material illusion, then we have to accept it's described there's 5 helpless creatures, and we see them as our guru. So we should learn the needful, that we have to understand that we don't want to become buried in this material illusion. So what's the 5th one? And this is the one that's being brought up in this particular verse in this section, or in the Bhagavatam. And this is the maddened moth. That's how it's described. So it's just said that such a fool loses all intelligence and is destroyed, just as a moth maddened by the fire rushes blindly into its flames. So this, what happens, it destroys itself. We become addicted to these momentary pleasures, and we lose the power to understand the spiritual reality behind this dull matter, and then we're completely destroyed. So Sridhar Swami explains these analogies, and he gave all these analogies that we just went through, and how this moth is killed by attraction in the form of fire. And of these 5 different types of gurus, these little tiny gurus, this is the most fatal one here, is the attraction involved to sense objects, of seeing, of rupa, of form. So that's illustrated in this verse today. So there's a nice purport to in the 11th canto, 8th chapter, 8th verse. And this sort of says, a lusty person becomes blind and foolish through sexual indulgence, and his soul is lost in the fire of sense gratification. This whole disaster can be avoided by taking seriously the process of chanting the holy names. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Caitanya Mahaprabhu, his empowered representatives, like Srila Prabhupada and all his disciples, and even his grand disciples, he's created a movement to save people from this dungeon of material life, and that we should take it very seriously and take advantage of this opportunity. So just like a single twig, it can be easily broken, or it can be easily influenced. But if you have a bundle of twigs, like a bunch of devotees together, you're very strong. And this is gained through our good association. So just like the single twig can be broken, but if you put many twigs like this bounded together, it becomes impossible to break. So we want to become Kṛṣṇa conscious, but in our heart there's still many mundane desires. But we all need to make advancement. And by associating with enthusiastic devotees, compassionate devotees, we help each other and nourish our desires for Kṛṣṇa consciousness. And this strong association, it creates a strong atmosphere. So this is a warning for us that we should be not loose, in our associations, whatever we do, we see, but we have to be committed and strictly follow, so that we could avoid being broken. So we'll end with a little chart that I made here, understanding Maya and the spiritual dangers and protective measures. So, yeah, we have to let go of, they say, of blame, as I mentioned before, that you never heal or build anything worthwhile from a base of blame. So we have to acknowledge our own emotions acknowledge them. We don't have to dwell on them. We take responsibility for our own reactions, our feelings, and recognizing that blaming, it doesn't really help you heal or grow. But we have to let go of anger, frustration, and then we reframe our perspectives with the perspective of the Bhagavatam, and we focus on the intentions, positive intentions and thoughts to serve Kṛṣṇa, not the negative ones. So we have to reflect on what we learn throughout the day, what we read, and we find out where we're going wrong and we correct it. And this is how we move forward with enthusiasm like that. So let's go into this chart I made. So as we discussed how Maya manifests in different ways, so we see women as Maya, and we see it's described as the gateway to hell. It attracts and blocks our spiritualization. And the enchanting power, the beautiful features captivate even great souls. And the material allurements that focuses on decoration and enjoyment. But there's hidden dangers. It's described, another analogy, like the covered well. If you fall into it, it's like leads to your death. So that's the blinding force. It's the topmost cause of material bondage. Is that big enough to see? It's okay? Or too small? Could be bigger, yeah. Sorry about that. I should have did one slide for each one. But I'll just read them to you, go through And then this another one, how Maya manifests as men as Maya. So it's like a mutual gateway. Men are also gateways to hell for women. And the illusory power is seen as a bestower of material assets and material attachment. Focus on wealth, house, children, like that. So what are the general consequences of these types of Maya? Is that we get the loss of our knowledge, and they're spiritually degraded. We lose our gravity or intelligence, and it leads to repeated birth and death. So it really helps us deepen this identification of our body. And so the hellish condition is, as we described earlier, the tamishra and anda tamishra. So that's a critical warning. Associating with materially minded persons is more dangerous than suicide, described in this verse for spiritual seekers. So what are the spiritual protection? Described here. Right association. Avoid bad company. Stay away from materialistic persons. Seek devotees. Associate with Kṛṣṇa conscious souls. ISKCON community. Find the best spiritual association. Travel in groups. Brahmacharis should never be alone. And limit our interaction. Associate with the opposite gender only for important business. And then Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Chant Hare Kṛṣṇa, surrender. See the Lord's beauty, focus on the divine features of Kṛṣṇa. And then devotional service, engage everything in the Lord's service. And real renunciation is to, we see there, rather than abandon, engage everything in Kṛṣṇa service. And then also our protection is our spiritual guidance from our Guru Maharaj. Follow the instructions. It's like the rope to take us out of the material world. We have to have submissive inquiry and internal, external. So see Kṛṣṇa within and the Guru without, we get that spiritual guidance. And then self-control and knowledge is important. By practicing celibacy, control the senses, know your true identity, understand what suffering is, and then develop detachment. See the material needs as unwanted. So, here we have it. Maya's influence is so powerful, but it's insurmountable, but it can be overcome simply by Kṛṣṇa consciousness and surrendering to Kṛṣṇa. So that's the ultimate goal. By following these principles, we can transcend this illusion of Maya and make tangible progress towards spiritual liberation. So this path requires constant vigilance, good association, and unwavering devotion to Kṛṣṇa. So this is our boundaries, and we're given these boundaries. We have the foundation, it's clear why we do these things. We know things that we need to do. We set our personal parameters, not just what feels good for you, but what actually is important for pleasing Kṛṣṇa. And this is how we become aware. And then as we read, we find the triggers that, that trigger us into falling into Maya. And then we make the proper adjustments. So this is what we have to do, create these boundaries in our life. Who we associate with, what we do. Because it's described in this verse, you become like who you associate with. So if we follow these principles, then we could transcend this illusion of Maya and make tangible progress for Kṛṣṇa consciousness. So it's very important. So I guess the essence pretty much is that this sex desire is natural, it's powerful, it's deeply entangling force in the mature world, but it's not insurmountable. Through this structured spiritual practice, wise association, and most importantly, if we develop a higher taste through Kṛṣṇa consciousness, we can transcend all these desires and we can achieve liberation. Wow, so it's exactly 8:30. So any comments, questions, realizations? Hope I didn't offend anybody today with our images. Just like these verses, they're kind of, they wake you up, and you almost want to feel offended because of the way we're coarse fools and dancing dogs and things like that. So, any comments, questions? Yes. Thank you. Oh yeah, where's the mic? Is there a mic or no? But I'll try to repeat it. So go ahead, yeah. Yeah, I think it's important that it should be discussed. But I think it should be discussed, as I was kind of mentioning, with compassion and understanding, not to blame and point fingers or to criticize. That's the point I was making, is that I think, as we want to help each other, we want to create a good environment, spiritual environment, and have good association by bringing out the good and encouraging and discussing these things openly. And actually we have to be honest within ourselves. Like, what do we really need? Not that, like the whole Gajendra story, some people are stronger in a particular ashram than other people. So you just have to be honest. But yeah, I think we need to be discussed more with a mood of compassion and upliftment, not a mood of, finger pointing or blasting like that. Exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. 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 That's how it's becoming strong together. Yeah, so yeah, everyone from Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, everyone has affected by the sense of sexual desire, except for Narayan, it's described. I think, except for Narayan. This, it says the sage Narayan. Yes, Mother, you had your hand up first. Yes. Ah. So what's the difference between anything and everything? Is it? That's a good question. I think we have to see Kṛṣṇa as everything, but you can't accept, there's certain, not anything you can use and you are able to use. Some people are stronger than others, so yeah, so I think that's a good point. Yes, and you had your hand up over there? Vishwakarma, right? Go ahead. Yes. Yeah, that's it. I was trying to make the point of boundaries. We set our own boundaries. Like you may have to like work with women, you know, in your service, but you have a boundary where you won't dally with them, right? Or they may say, "Oh, let's go outside and talk," you know, like let's go over here, let's go over here, let's do this. Like a lot of people that they don't have boundaries. Like someone will say, "Hey, let's go somewhere. Let's go, you know, to a bar." You're like, "No, no," and then you say no, and then they say, "Come on, let's go, come on," and you say no, and then they say, "No, no, come on, come on," and then you give in, right? We see the story of Kashyapa Muni and Diti, you know. But after, you have to train them, like you have a boundary, right? So maybe after the 4th time you say no, then they leave you alone, right? And then next time, maybe after the 3rd time you say no, they'll leave you alone. And then after you just say no once, and then, but you have to set your own boundaries, you know? Yeah, so. Well, thank you for your kind attention. Jai, all glories to Srimad Bhagavatam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai. Jai, thank you.